is January the 16th. This is the Budget and Finance Committee. My name is Dick Rhodes, and I'm the chairman of the committee, and I wish to call the meeting to order. So if you would stand with us if you can, and we'll pledge allegiance to the flag. We have one of our committee members that is absent and is excused. So we do have a quorum. Before we start, I'm going to give you a little preview on the meeting today. We only have 2 items that we'll be discussing, and one of which is our CFO is going to present the financials for November and December. And then Carl will present the updated version of our capital projects. So that's what we have to look forward to for this morning. So I would like to present the minutes as amended for December the 5th. So are there any comments on that? If not, we'll go ahead and accept those. Thank you. Our very first agenda item is item 3.01, and it will be presented by Cliff Swan, our CFO, and it will be our November and December financials.
Thank you, Director Rhodes. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be back in the swing of things, and happy to present the December year-to-date financials. Couple of points here before I get started is we use this December year-to-date to begin our budgeting process. So it's significant that we have 6 months worth of actuals, and then we'll project out 6 months for the rest of the year, and then we'll use that as a baseline for our budgeting process. So that's, just wanted to call that into, so everybody knows that. So today we're going to go over the agenda, and we're going to look at month to date versus budget and prior year. And in the operating section, then we'll transition to the capital section, same thing, budget to actual and actual to prior year. And then we'll take a look at the capital expenditures to budget year to date, and then finish up on the fully funded balance percentage. So looking at the monthly December actual versus budget, in December we finished favorable on operating revenue, of $39,000. Golf kind of carried the day. Struggled a little bit in Sports Pavilion. We had to adjust the budget for December Sports Pavilion with the closure of August. So it put a pretty big number out there to beat for December, so that kind of struggled there. And then we also had a closure of the Sports Pavilion due to a pipe main burst, which didn't help for the month. But I anticipate that we'll make that up this year. On the expense side, $129,000 favorable. Utilities kind of came out of the ether, which is good. So although we still were $6,000 unfavorable in utilities, it's much better than we had been tracking the prior 5 months. And salaries and wages, we got some open seats there, so we've got some favorable in there by $55,000. And then supplies and services and equipment, just able to keep that cost down compared to budget. We'll see how it tracks throughout the year. $129,000 favorable on expenses. Total $168,000 favorable in operating cash outflow, or inflow, for the month. Looking at prior year, we're $240,000 favorable to prior year. Operating revenue up $226,000, and expenses favorable by $14,000. Looking at the budget, Throughout the year, we're 23,000 favorable, right on budget for revenue. And then on the expense side, 156,000 favorable year to date. Again, we talked about utilities with the increases in rates and usage for the first 5 months. So we'll see how the rest of the year tracks. On the landscape maintenance side, seed came in cheaper than we had budgeted, which is obviously good. And that was the that was the main driver there at 160,000 favorable. On repairs and maintenance, we're struggling a little bit. We'll see how the year tracks. Some of that's just timing when it happens or doesn't happen, but tough to budget that. But on the expense side there for repairs and maintenance, some of the key drivers there are the tree and landscape repairs that we've had to do for from the heat of the summer. That's one large item. Another large item was rolling stock in golf. We had a seat vacant last year towards the end of the year, so there were a lot of items that we had to carry forward, repairs we had to do on some of our rolling stock this year, which was budgeted for last year that we can't carry forward because it's operating budget. So there's some things there, and then just overall the pool equipment as well. We had a couple pieces of equipment on the pool side go down or that need to be repaired, that non-capital items that we had to take care of this year. So that's tracking heavy. In talking with Russ, he feels like we should be able to account for that as we move forward in the budget. Overall, 156,000 favorable on expense, though. So looking at the overall operating cash outflow for the first 6 months, keep in mind it's the first 6 months we make a lot of investments, and we'll see the next 6 months we'll go, well, they're not red there, but we'll go black, and then by February on the financial statement by the end of February. But 179,000 favorable in operating cash outflow to budget. Looking versus prior year, operating revenue up almost 800,000, operating expenses up almost 900,000, total 124,000 unfavorable to prior year. Some of the things driving that are salaries, wages, and benefits, 662,000 in increases. We had the merit increase and the minimum wage increase this year, and healthcare costs, increase in healthcare costs, all budgeted, but 662,000 compared to prior year. And then on utility side, 221,000. Again, we've talked about that, but we'll see how the rest of the year tracks when it comes to the budget. So let's take a look at the capital section of the income statement. APFs, had a good month in APFs, 109,000 favorable over budget. And that estimated reserve allocation is a percentage of the member dues. We're tracking right on budget there. And looking at the investment income, we had 48,000 favorable there in investment income. That's a trend that we'll continue to see throughout the year. And looking down in unrealized gains and losses, we had a good month, 721,000 in favorable valuation change in our reserve fund investments, and for a total of 966,000 favorable in the capital section. Compare that to prior year, and it looks even more favorable. And that's due to, obviously, the APF fees. We had an increase in the APF fee to 5,000. But looking at the investment income, we're tracking right at 40 to 45,000 per month. That'll continue. And then again, on the investment, the unrealized, basically the valuation change in the reserve fund is favorable by 1.1 million for the month of December compared to last year. Total capital related favorable 1.3 million. Looking at year-to-date APS fees, 281,000 favorable. Again, those APF fees are coming in stronger than we had budgeted, which is always good. healthy community. And taking a look at the investment income, 259,000 favorable for the first 3 months to budget, and we should see that for the first 6 months, and then we should see that same trend. We should end up $500,000 ahead of budget if things continue the way they have been in investment income, which goes, it's real money, goes right back in the reserve fund and gets reinvested. So very good. And then looking at the unrealized, so we had the realized gain of 250,000 that was liquidating for the cash injection to our operating account to cover the prior year capital items. We experienced some losses there. However, on the unrealized gains, total of 848,000 year to date. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully that trend will continue. For total of 1.274 million favorable through to budget through the first 6 months of the year. Compared to prior year, again, all good news on this front. At the end of the day, 1.8 million favorable. Again, you can see at 1,681,000 and the unrealized gains and losses section, you can see that reserve fund turning around there, which is great news. So 14 or so, about 14 APFs higher than prior year through the first 6 months, with the APF increase accounting for 478,000. Reserve fund valuation, 833 down the prior year versus a positive 598 in the current year, which is resulting in that roughly 1.5 million increase in the reserve fund valuation. And then investment income at 245,000 over prior year. All good news. Looking at the year-to-date revenue over under expense, so factoring in the operating and capital section, we're 1.453 favorable to budget and almost 1.7 favorable to prior year. Switching gears to the capital expenditures. Looking at the capital budget, roughly $5.5 million in capital budget, and we have a projected savings right now of roughly $525,000 to that. On this list, you could see the highlighted items where the completed items where those savings are created, and then also some of the items that we've repriced and the price changes in there, the non-highlighted, non-completed items. Going down that list, the heavy hitters in the savings are the lack of need for stabilization in some of the paving projects. And I want to plug Todd here, had a savings of $222,000 on a shoreline repair at Stardust, which is completely funded by the Arizona Department of Tourism funds, but decided to take a different route on that shoreline and experience a tremendous savings there. Totaling that down, $525,000 in savings to date. Point out a couple of things here as well. That's with the Echo Mesa well pump. So even we paid for that in savings, and even with that $72,000 project, and then the lawn bowling benches of $23,000, still experiencing a plus $525,000. Looking at the allowances, we budget $400,000. We've issued $236,000 in POs with a balance of $164,000 left. Now, the allowance funds, these are funds for unexpected capital expenditures. So unexpected could mean that it was an emergency. Unexpected could mean that it was something that wasn't planned for that came up. It could come from a club request. It could come from the governing board. It could come from operations. So these are unexpected things, unplanned things that the allowance monies are for. Now, we try and bucket those when we put the budget together based on prior years, what we've spent in certain areas in prior years. However, it is one big bucket of $400,000. So we try and allocate it accordingly, but we have those funds to cover those unexpected things. Anything over 49,999 goes to a vote to the governing board. Unless it's an emergency, then we spend it and we do a facts and findings like a well pump. So that's how we allocate those funds. So you can see through here, there's items that you can look on there and go, oh, that was an emergency, or oh, that was, maybe came from the governing board or operations. So you can go through this list and look at that. So a total of $236,000 spent on unplanned, unexpected allowance spend. So I can't tell you how Pete's eyes lit up when he put this slide together, because this is Pete's world, the reserve fund and the reserve study, and how that all kind of comes together in a fully funded balance percentage. He said it was a Christmas tree. And I said, Christmas trees have red, and he said, well, this one's all green. Okay, so this is an undecorated Christmas tree. But all good news here, everything favorable, all impacting the FFB percent. So we're budgeted at 49%, we're currently at 51% through December. Good news. That concludes my presentation.
Does anyone in the committee have a question for Cliff? Mr. Bernardo?
Thank you, Dick. Cliff, it's wonderful to see the APFs are running ahead of budget. I'm pretty sure that was a gift from somewhere because it wasn't really what we expected. The question I have, just for curiosity, can you tell from the closing documents that you see, are these homes being bought for cash or are they being financed? Can you tell?
I don't. I can get you that information. No, but it's a good question. I don't know. I don't want to speculate. I have an opinion on it, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because a lot of doom and gloom was projected and continues to be put out there that with interest rates so high, home sales are not nearly what they should be. But I think because of the type of community that we are, we may not necessarily follow national trends. So I was just more curious than anything. It's great news for the community to see that these homes are still turning over.
Yeah, there's a component to being recession-proof, the rec centers. There is a component there.
Director Novello?
Thank you, Chairman Rhodes. First of all, thanks again, Cliff. You're always very transparent, but you added in a specific slide that you know is near and dear to several people's heart. That extra viewpoint and explanation on what we use our allowances for is very helpful. So thanks for that. And just to also amplify, if I could, Frank's question, it'll be good to have as we go into our deliberations on the budget, because that kind of insight will help us project forward. One of the things that we'll have to figure out with your help is what's the right projection on number of house sales and so forth. So I know you'll be looking at it. When you have it, you can share with us. You noted that we had a hit to our revenue due to the water main break in December, I think it was. That water main was something that's an EPCOR responsibility. Do they have any program where they would, or any culpability to reimburse us for part of the revenue lost for those days we were down?
In this instance, no. Okay. I would say that if it took us down for weeks at a time, we do carry insurance for that. So we do have revenue loss insurance as part of our coverages, and we would file a claim with our insurance company, and they would go after EPCOR if that were the case. But in this instance, less than 5,000 of that amount. Thank
you. And again, although not directly responsible, great news. We're continuing to track in a way that we want to see on the investments. So it's going to take a while to turn that around. Again, I should know this off the top of my head, but Director Rhodes, when does Cap Trust come in next?
February the 6th.
Excellent. So for those who are listening or here online now, that's good to know. So we will have a chance to ask them questions and pass that along to them. Thanks.
I have a question for you, Cliff. Actually, Frank's comments kind of spurred my thought process on this. Do we have any idea of the number of cash sales for homes in Sun City West?
Yeah, I'll have to do some digging on that. I think we would have some of that data. We'd have to go pull each deal, but I can pull some of that together.
Well, I'm not sure if there's any correlation between that and the decision to buy a home here, but my sense is that would probably make the decision easier for people.
Yeah, I mean, if they timed it right and whatever they were selling yeah, for sure.
Okay, do we have anyone online? Oh, I'm sorry, Dwayne?
Yeah, one
Dwayne.
question here. On the allowance spend slide,
Yes.
library design plans, sounds administrative to me, but yet the reasoning there is safety and structural. Can you-
So that was the bucket that we put it in. So the structural would be anything structural or safety. So again, we classify that 400,000 in different areas within the allowance bucket, and we choose those areas to apply that spend. And it is a capital expenditure if we move forward with the project. If we don't move forward with the project, we will expense that, and it will come back out of allowances.
Yeah, Director Novello.
Just to add on to what my colleague Dwayne was saying, one of the things that we could consider would be to create a different bucket for discretionary spend items like that, because I understand that it's all one bucket. You've explained this to me previously, but still, if it's something that we want to have a different designation for next year, that may apply a little bit more broadly to things like that.
Yeah. There's also some other design
'Cause
work
it's
in
not
there
really
for
safety.
the Silvercraft room.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, so, to classify that consulting project as safety may be a little questionable. It doesn't matter. It all comes out of one bucket. Maybe going forward, we can create a different bucket. That's all.
Sure.
Mr. Bernardo?
Thank you again, Dick. I certainly think that Christine's idea about a bucket for perhaps general manager's discretionary spend may be the right thing to do. There are some items on here that I question. Zymergy Club room storage is being unexpected facility improvements. I'm not quite certain why that would be unexpected. The same with the Silvercraft Club design work. This should have all been expected. Unless the side of a building fell down and it was an emergency to get some work done, I kind of don't think those things ought to be unexpected. Again, like Christine said, it all comes out of the same bucket at the end of the day. But perhaps we can talk further about this idea of having a manager's discretionary fund.
Yeah, I think that's something that the committee will probably put on the agenda and have a discussion on. Right now I'm hesitant to say when. It will either be probably February 6th. February 20th is when Mr. Swin presents the budget, so I don't want to overshadow that. So it'll be in the very near future. Okay, thank you.
The allowances in the budget for next year's capital budget is 420,000, and we've allocated within that bucket of money the different areas, so we can discuss it at that time
Okay, thank you.
during the budgeting process.
Yeah, before, I want to just announce that we're going to ask for comments from the audience now. So if there's anyone on YouTube that wants to respond, this would be the time to enter your response because there is a bit of a delay here. Okay, so we do have a gentleman at the podium now. If you'd give us your name and your rec number, please.
Sure, Chris Waller, 140558. I like these presentations. It helps me understand everything that's going on. When I see a positive in APFs, I really appreciate later seeing the number of transactions so I can kind of rationalize that positive in my head. I have the same thought when I see a positive in labor and benefits. I'd like to see later where our FTEs, our full-time equivalent heads are compared to what our budget is. Because when I see that we're 160,000, I think it was, to the positive, well, if we're 20 heads down, that's not necessarily good news, right? So I'd appreciate if that was added to that as a suggestion.
Okay.
There's actually, if I make an editorial comment about labor, there's an issue, and I really don't know a lot about it, but I do know that there's some movement in the Arizona legislature to increase minimum wage to $18 an hour. I think if that happens, we're going to be taking a giant gulp up here. And do you have any idea? I don't want to put you on the spot, Cliff, because do you know anything about that and how far it's gone? And
What I know about it now is they're currently getting signatures,
for it.
and I believe the signature count they need to get needs to be 10% of the voting base from the last election, and they get it to put it on the to create a proposition to put it on the ballot. So it's in the initiative stage right now. We'll know in July if it's going to be put on the ballot. The last time this happened was in 2016. It was Prop 206. The minimum wage went up from $8.05 to $10 an hour based on a proposition that was added to the ballot in November of 2016.
Okay, Mr. Bignato, I think you had another comment.
I do. In regards to ballot initiatives, this is being worked on by an organization called One Wage. I believe they're headquartered in Connecticut, and they are behind a 5-state initiative to take away the minimum wage that food servers get, which is somewhat less than the standard minimum wage. And they want all food servers to all receive the same minimum wage that everybody else receives, and then they'll expect tips on top of that. If it does become a ballot initiative, people should perhaps see that this will probably be devastating to the restaurant business.
Yeah, there's a 5-year phase-in to pull all tipped employees up to the minimum wage on this initiative as well. You're correct. Yeah, fortunately, that portion won't impact us, but we do have 300 employees that are literally tied to minimum wage, and then about another 50 or so that are directly impacted through compression. So it would be a big deal for us. It would be a big budget buster. We'll have to figure out how we're going to address that in the budget to be prepared for it.
Thank you. Do we have anyone online, Christine?
Yes, we do. First question comes from Mystical Michelle, 127597. Have the results of the library study been received, and can they be reviewed by residents?
The next
I'm not-
phase, the next phase of the library study is on the docket for budget approval. So the current one has been presented to the community, which was kind of like an overall, without getting into structural and all that, design concept from our contractor, which is the 40,000 you see in the allowances.
So that study can be reviewed in I believe it was an October meeting at the governing board, correct?
Yes.
That's where a resident could find it. Thank you. Next question is from Nick Turner, 131829. I see we are well under budget on supplies and equipment spend. Is this permanent, or have we delayed spending in the area and will take a hit later?
Good question. Supplies and those sorts of things sometimes come up above and below. It just kind of depends on when they get spent. So I would say we don't anticipate that savings to continue. We anticipate spending that. I will say, though, not all of that. Now, we did have significant savings in the janitorial supplies this year. Carl took over our rec division and is responsible for that area, and he really tightened up the supplies and the supply spend and the supply usage. We've had 20,000 to date savings there. And now Carl took that ship over last year in January. So he started implementing savings measures then. So we won't see the trend be that high, but we'll still experience savings there. So kudos to him on that and his team.
Thank you, Cliff, and we appreciate your presentation. So then the next item on our agenda is item 3.02. It's the 24-25 capital budget, the January revisions, and this is going to be presented by Carl Wilhelm.
Thank you, Director Rhodes. Good morning, committee. Todd Patty will have a portion to talk about in our presentation this morning as well. And as we have done over the months of September through November, our first document is the 24-25 project planning process overall document. You will see that it includes everything from the highest capital request to the lowest, so that we always see at all of our committee meetings what the entire budget request is. And really the only comment that I have to make on this is that this list only has the January column, where before we were continually showing the changes between September through November. This is the list that was given to the general manager based off of the final discussions in November. The only thing that was added that we won't be talking about in the slide presentation is in the new category, and we added the $25,000 discussion cost assumption for a facilities monitors booth or guard shack at Palm Ridge. So I just wanted to be clear on that. And then I am aware that in February, when I give this presentation again, that we'll probably have some other below $50,000 adjustments that I'll be sharing with you in this part of the presentation. So the capital budget is always fluid, and that's why we show you the entire list, $0 to the highest amount every month. Moving on into the actual presentation, this is the FY 24-25 proposed capital budget. We are at a place in the project planning process of 50,000 and greater discussions, and so I will begin. Our first line item is in the new category. Our categories are new, reserve study items in blue, and then golf reserve study items in green, and then an allowance category. The Sports Pavilion Lizard Acres Bar Room renovation and equipment, $225,000 projected for 40 linear feet of bar top and construction of a bar. 2 walk-up point of sales, static seating for 160 to 180 persons in the architectural design and review process by Maricopa County. Maintains 5 Wii bowling displays, 3 dartboards. It has new coolers and sanitizing equipment, and it also reuses some of the equipment that we have. 3 compartment sink, 4-tap beer cooler. We propose to add a new 2-tap beer cooler for craft beers. It involves modifying and adding lighting and controls throughout the room, and modified plumbing and electrical and HVAC. And these decisions are going to be highly based on what the engineers from the architect develop with me over the next few weeks and month, in case there's any changes. Bar framing and door decor plans are included in this cost projection. Moving on, we have the library expansion renovation design, architecture, and documents for $100,000. This request is for interior and exterior renovations and additions. Design architectural engineering fees provides architectural plans, produces 60% planning documents for qualified vendors to bid from, and is part of a project planning process that we consider a 2-year process, if not longer, based on what the decisions from the governing board budgetary process determines. And it, again, gives us the ability to solicit those costs for future year budgets. Just as a comment on this, there is no expectation just to flat out spend $100,000 on this. This is the availability of funds for the projected costs of when we go into relationship with architectural services and engineers. So it could be phased implementations of cost requests. We could only possibly spend a fraction of this, but right now we're too early of a time frame to determine what that exactly is. So that's why the $100,000 is placed on the docket. Moving on to the R.H. Johnson tractor and backhoe, $75,000. A little more information from facilities maintenance for equipment, rapid response availability, eliminates costly rentals, eliminates travel time if the vehicle is available from a rental facility, and reduces need for some subcontractors. The Beardsley Park iron fence with gate, $57,500. Decoratively encloses the Beardsley Park. 4-foot tall iron fencing set within the landscaping along 2 sides of the park. 4 community entry gates, 3 maintenance vehicle gates. Eliminates unsightly seasonal temporary fence and replacement cost, and reduces labor and fatigue from temporary fence install. And then it definitely creates the controlled access points to the park and secures park during seasonal events. Just like the library request, we have the Coons Tennis Facility renovation discussion. Design architecture on documents, $50,000 placed for the unknown costs for architectural engineering discussions and design. And this also produces the 60-cent planning document for qualified vendors in Maricopa County to work from for a project plan approval. And it gives me that opportunity to solicit the cost planning for future fiscal year budgets. That is the completion of the new category, 50,000 and greater. We're moving on into reserve study items. The Kuntz outfield fence replacement, $495,000, replaces 520 linear feet of 24-foot tall fence, replaces the existing crash pads. New fence and posts to be supported 30-foot tall. Fence posts currently broken in 2 locations have been repaired for the short-term impact, thanks to facilities maintenance. The cost impacts are increased due to a diameter of posts and the digging, proximity to the easement wall logistics, an increase in fence height, and then the fact of the matter is that we have to remove the warning track temporarily to install this new fence system. Silvercraft remodel, millwork and countertops, $375,000. This is an interior renovation of all the original club millwork and countertops. There is approximately a 60-40 split, 60% of replacement with new in the new areas. Some actual millwork is being reduced and eliminated entirely. And then about 40% of the existing is being refaced. I had a very successful meeting this last week with a couple of new millwork vendors, and they are interested in doing reface. So I hope that relationship, as we go down the road here towards approval of this project, will prove out to create some cost savings in the project because of being able to confidently do refacing work. There's an office area demo in this project that's going to be finished with facilities maintenance. And then just for full transparency on this project, the reserve study tool also had LVT flooring being replaced in this room for $23,850, and the grid ceiling and sprinkler heads for $38,000. Palm Ridge outdoor pool deck resurface, and replacement, $186,266. This replaces 12,900 square foot of existing coating with a new EDPM colorized rubber that we have done at Kuntz and R.H. Johnson to date. We'll be grinding the existing cementatious deck in preparation for the new rubber coating, repairing any cracks underneath those areas, and a new color design with pool depth markers per county code. Palm Ridge Activities and Aquatics Building flat roof restoration. You'll see in this photo that this is an example of what a roof restoration looks like when we're done. The primary goal in this program of roof maintenance is that it keeps us from a project cost of approximately 5 times as much for replacing an actual physical structure of our roof system. We do engineering testing, making sure that our roof is in good shape. Once we get that data back, then we can determine that, yes, a restoration can extend our roof's 10-year life, our warranty for another 10 years. And we're going to have multiple projects proposed here in my comments coming up on this same plan. Moving over to Palm Ridge, the fitness center cardio equipment, $159,000. Cardio equipment replacement schedules for each rec center every 5 years. In fact, this morning over at Beardsley, the new equipment is going in as we speak. This particular project is 26 pieces of miscellaneous treadmills, cross trainers, recumbent bikes, rowers, VersaStrider, and SciFit machines. This picture here is demonstrating our typical fitness room. This is Beardsley, not Palm Ridge. R.H. Johnson Admin Building, flat roof restoration for $140,000. Also a 10-year extension of our warranty. Landscape Maintenance has asked for 5 new landscaping vehicles to be replaced. My document shows 10-year average life. I was corrected that we have an actual 13 average life on those 5 particular vehicles, and this replaces the heavy-duty Workman series of Toro equipment that we have. Another pool area at Palm Ridge is the indoor pool deck resurface. This is the same rubber EDPM replacement of our existing coated deck, 4,242 square foot. Also the 613 linear foot of vertical edge coping, which is probably the most difficult part of the project. And again, we'll have a new color design. I will mention that we have a encumbered project that we've had on the books for a couple of years, and that is the wainscoting, the tile, subway tile that's in that room. I would plan on doing both of those projects at the same time during the same closure. Palm Ridge Fitness Equipment, we already discussed cardio equipment. This particular year, we're also asking for the strength equipment to be replaced. The useful life has exceeded its 20 years. The manufacturer of the existing equipment has clearly notified us that there will be no more parts and pieces available for that particular series. And currently, facilities maintenance is experiencing items that they cannot repair in the welded components. So this is proposed for new strength equipment. It does not get replaced every 5 years. We try to maximize the longest life that we can, and we generally get 20 years plus out of this equipment. R.H. Johnson copier machines for admin, 3 of them, $62,400, replacing existing copier machines. You might see some changes in this line item depending on what admin and accounting team determine in the upcoming budget process. More to come on this. R.H. Johnson Fitness Edition, small maintenance pool storage flat roof. Also another roof restoration to extend the 10-year warranty on our roofs. Facilities Maintenance has a pickup truck, M8, that's a 2010 Chevy 2500 up for replacement. Recreation Center HVAC replacements. I've, just for full budget transparency, I included all HVAC replacements, even if they are below 50,000, just so that you can see the full complement of HVAC units that facilities maintenance will be replacing throughout the year if approved. Again, these are reserve study line items, 5 units at Kuntz, 5 units at the R.H. Johnson Library, 3 units in different location at R.H. Johnson, and another unit at an outbuilding at Kuntz. That concludes the reserve study items on my list. There are a few more coming up in Todd's part of this presentation, but to kind of close this out, we have allowances projected for $420,000. You can see the categories: well pump replacement, safety and structural, equipment, information technology, energy conservation, ADA compliance upgrades, and unexpected facility improvements. Look forward to your discussions on this, as you mentioned earlier. And Todd, a couple more just out of cycle. This would be a project that I would manage. Desert Trails Pro Shop parking lot asphalt. So this would be one of our final 2 projects. Stardust and Desert Trails are the only 2 remaining parking lots. Stardust is still 2 to 3 years out, and maybe even a little further than that, but Desert Trails is certainly up to bat for having the parking lot milled and replaced like we've done in other locations. Moving on in the slide, and then Golf Ops has requested 20 additional carts replacement in their inventory, and the average age of their carts are 10 plus years. I think that is my complement of slides. Todd?
And good morning. I just have a few slides. This is basically the same presentation that I had at the workshop meeting on Friday, so some of you may have saw this, but there's been a few changes over the weekend, just minor ones, just some number changes. So with that, go ahead and as Carl was mentioning equipment that he has in his area, this is the golf maintenance equipment. This is a replacement plan that we have. And then this year we have 19 units scheduled for replacement, and they vary from greens mowers to fairway mowers, sprayers, greens rollers, turf vacuums. We have a fertigation system in there that we use to put fertilizer out through the irrigation system. And so we have a total of $982,026 for that. And then on the vehicle side, we have 13 that are scheduled for replacement, 11 light and heavy duty utility carts, and those are used for daily maintenance, for cup changing and various jobs on the golf course. We have 1 dump truck, which we call shared equipment between all 7 golf courses. That's up for replacement. That actually replaces a 1994 Isuzu truck, so that has a lot of wear and tear on it. So, and that comes in at $357,689. And again, I'd like to note that all these are listed on the reserve study. And our process during the budget is to go through that and evaluate each item on the reserve study and see if we truly need to replace it. A lot of times we find out that we don't need to. If it's a piece of equipment that's been running fine, we're not putting any money into it to keep it out and running. We'll push it out to another year or even beyond that, and that will come up for evaluation in the next year. So this year we delayed the purchase of 4 units for a total of $161,560. Total equipment replacement is 1.3 million, or it works out to be about $191,387 per golf course. And then just here's a summary of the equipment that we're replacing. Again, as I mentioned, most of it's mowers that we use on a daily basis to maintain the golf course. Average age is 10.5 years. And so this is well beyond the industry standard for useful life. You know, we get a lot of years out of our equipment, and I credit our mechanics that we have at each golf course and their preventative maintenance program. And that's how we're able to hold on to these things a little bit longer than usual. And again, a summary for the vehicle replacement. Average age is 13 years old. And you can see there's that 94 Isuzu up there, dump truck that's been housed over Desert Trails. All right, so on to our project, our Echo Mesa irrigation and turf reduction project. This is very similar, or if not identical, to what we did over at Grandview last year. It's just scaled back quite a bit. So we're currently in phase 1 of the project, the planning process. That is in the current budget, and we did budget $205,000 for that. And you can see, I've just updated this over the weekend, but irrigation design plan, turf reduction design, pump station design, and GPS mapping have all been completed. Engineer drawings, the completion date is set for January 31st. Submit design plans and documents for the bidding process, that was set for January 25th. And then we have a pre-bid meeting with the vendors, the 3 vendors, February 6th. And then the deadline for them to submit their bids will be on March 5th of 2024. And then phase 2, we've put in $5,550,000 for this irrigation project. We're looking at a cost per acre of $50,000 now. That's up about $7,000 from the Grandview project. And a lot of that has to do with the increase in materials, 12 to 15% increase. And that's the sprinkler heads and the piping and all that that goes with the irrigation system. Some of that has to do with an increase in the rock that we're going to be putting down. New distribution station, pump station for $280,000. Now, if you remember, this was put into the budget or is in phase 1 when we did Grandview. So, you know, we learned a few things as we go through this project and what works best. And so that's how we arrived at some of these numbers. Installation of road crossing main lines, we have 7 of those over there at Echo Mesa. And then the transfer line connection, which we didn't have over at Grandview, that's new, so that's an additional cost to this project. And that's very vital to being able to transfer water to the other 7 golf courses. And then on the turf reduction side, we've identified 18 acres of turf for removal, and that's a 14-foot perimeter coming out around the entire golf course on average. At Grandview was a little bit more. It was probably in the neighborhood of 20, 23 feet coming out on the perimeter. And then, of course, street fronts and road crossings, same thing that we had over at Grandview. We're going to have that at Echo Mesa as well. And then our desert landscape plan, the trees and plants that will be going in, we have 2,000 plants scheduled for Echo Mesa's project. I believe we had over 6,700 in the Grandview project. And trees, those are going to go in on the street fronts and road crossings. We're not putting any trees behind the homeowners. That's where the majority or all the trees are going to be going over at Echo Mesa. We have 60 of those scheduled to go in. And again, over at Grandview, I think we had 287 trees in that project. So again, scaled back from the Grandview project, but very similar or identical to that. And then a timeline that I put together, and I'm going to update as we go. I made some changes over the weekend to this, but just some areas to note on this. In November, we're looking at having a public forum, just like what we did with Grandview, where residents can come in and they can see the plans, they can ask questions, and kind of get an idea of how this is all going to work. We're looking at a second forum in February of 2025. Project start date is scheduled for Monday, April 7th. And the entire golf course will be closed at that time. We kind of went back and forth a little bit, whether we should just close 9 holes like what we did over at Grandview. We primarily did that for the reason of the restaurant that we have, the Crooked Putter, the golf lab, and the merchandising, and also the ladies and men's putters. So there was really a good solid reason for only closing 9 and keeping the other 9 open, the front 9 at Grandview. But we really don't have that over at Echo Mesa. So even though we're going to close the whole golf course, we're looking at starting on the back 9. That's where our pump station is located. So when it comes to the main line, everything comes out of that pump station and then feeds the entire golf course. Project completion date, we're looking at Thursday, August 29th, and then we go right into overseeding after that, the normal September 22nd, and then the golf course will reopen on Tuesday, October 21st of 2025. And then just a long-range plan on the turf reduction. Of course, you can see we've completed Grandview, Echo Mesa, 18 acres, and also put projected annual water savings off to the right there. You can see we're looking at saving 60 acre-feet annually with this project by taking out 18 acres. You can see over at Grandview, the 45 acres, which gave us 150 acre-feet of savings, and then Stardust in 2027, and Pebblebrook in 2029 for a total projected annual water savings of over 300 acre-feet. That's quite a bit. In fact, that's a lot. That you could almost water an entire golf course, something similar to Trail Ridge with that amount of water. So that's going to help keep us or put us in compliance with ADWR's 5th management plan. We're currently in the 4th management plan, which they rolled out last year. I'm pleased to announce that we were able to stay under the allotment, even though it was a little bit of a reduction by about 34 acre-feet in total for all 7 golf courses. And then there's still in 2025 with the 5th management plan, there's even a further reduction, but it's not bad. But I think we're going to be well under that, because by the time we get to 2025, we'll have a complete year of Echo Mesa and Grandview under our belt as far as water savings. So I'm comfortable in saying that I think we're going to be good with the allotment changes that the state's going to have. And then summer closures for the 5 years and some projects. Now I'm going to continue to update this. I just kind of threw some projects in there, especially towards the end when you get to 2028 with Trail Ridge and Echo Mesa. But Pebblebrook and Stardust will be closed this upcoming summer. We have some tree work we'd like to do and some T-box expansion over at Pebblebrook. And then in 2025, Shoreline Hardscape, which is a water conservation project on number 3. And then Echo Mesa irrigation project, the big one. And then Deer Valley, again, hardscape on 18, hardscape on 14 at Desert Trails, and then Stardust irrigation project phase 1, which we're currently under right now with the Echo Mesa project. And then Grandview hardscape on 3, Stardust irrigation project phase 2, Trail Ridge in 2028. We have a shoreline on 12, Echo Mesa tree removal and replacement. I think by the time we get to that, it'll probably change a little bit. And then the Pebblebrook irrigation project phase 1 in 28. And then the project will then break ground on in 2029. And that concludes my review of capital projects and equipment replacement.
Thank you very much. If you'll both stand by just for a minute, we appreciate that. Capital budgeting is such a critical issue that we deliberate over it for an extended period of time. The actual pullout of the 50,000 plus projects is scheduled for April the 2nd. Okay, so Carl, will we see between now and then another presentation on this
Every single month until the budget is approved.
till it's approved?
Our
Okay,
next phase in April begins the 100,000 and greater discussion. So, you know, my hopes is always that as today, we are done with less than 50 at the end of February. I'm hoping that we are done discussing and moving on from, 50,000 and or to 100. And then our April discussions are 100 to the largest capital project.
so today what we're looking at is the new projects 50,000 over.
Correct.
Okay. All right, good. Thank you for that. I would like to make some comments before I open this up for questions. And I want to instruct the committee that we do have time for deliberation with this. I know that we've seen this before, but I think this is the time that we do our consideration. If you have not, by now, if you have not visited the site, you should do that, just to get an idea of what what we're really looking at. I had a eye-opening experience in the silver shop when I went in there. So, but that would be my instruction to our committee, is to actually go and do that. I don't think that, what I would ask now is if you have clarification questions for either Carl or Todd, we could ask them. We're, at the end of the day, we're going to have a yes/no consensus on this. And we'll go to each item, and it'll be a yes/no. Well, right now, what I'm planning to do is to look at this for the February the 6th meeting, okay? So the actual pullout, though, will be done April the 2nd. I believe that's the scheduled date for it. So that will give us an idea of where we want to be. So Christine, do you have a question?
Yes, I know very well what these terms are, but for those of us who are either new to the committee or for our owner members who may be new to the process, that's why I was asking you off microphone. Sorry, folks, for the, what's the date that we will actually be going through this line by line as a committee? And also, what does pull out mean in your mind? And when are our committee recommendations due to the governing board for their final vote?
Okay, pullout, actually, that's the yes/no vote. And it's not a yes, but if we did this, it's yes, no. It'll be that simple. The deadline is April the 2nd, that it be done. So, Carl?
And your yes, no is a recommendation of yes and no.
Yes, it is.
Every committee
Yes.
has that opportunity for a yes, no scenario if.
Thank you for that clarification, because we really don't vote, we reach consensus. Okay? So, because only the governing board has the authority to do that. Thank you for that clarity. Okay. Cliff, you have an issue,
Just
question?
one comment before we go to questions and comments, because it might relieve a question. On the Lizard Acres design, we've been asked by properties to put together an ROI on that. So we're in the process of doing that, and we'll present that at the next properties meeting in February. I forget what exact date it is, but the next properties meeting in February. So we'll put together an ROI on that spend, $225,000. Currently, at the current profitability of Lizard Acres, the ROI would be about 13, 14 years on the current profitability, assuming that it didn't generate any additional revenue. But we'll have more details on that.
Okay, I'm a little surprised in ROI. I mean, because we have revenue and we have expenses.
Yeah, I know. It's an amenity. So there's no ROI on the library. There's no ROI.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we've been asked for that information, so we're going to present it. I just want everybody to know we're presenting it.
Okay, so I will open it, and again, we're really not looking for editorial comments. We're looking for questions and clarity, okay? And we are going to bring this back on February the 6th on the agenda. So, who would like to start off? Mr. Bagnato?
This is a quick question for Todd, actually. This way, I can't imagine that he doesn't want to get back and sit down. This is wonderful. We're seeing more savings in our water usage. And correct me if I'm wrong, 2 questions. We are in some type of contract with Briarwood that we lease them some of our water rights. Question 2, do we still have excess water rights plus what we're going to get from these savings?
Yes and yes. We do lease water to Briarwood. Not as much. We've reduced that amount over the last couple of years from what we originally had leasing them. And then the other question was, sorry, second part was that?
The other question then is, we have excess water rights already. In other words, we're going to be adding to what we have. We don't use all our water.
Right.
Correct.
Right. We do have excess water rights, and so we do have those available. And we will have more after 2025, because even though they reduce our allotments, they don't take away our water rights. Those are ours.
course.
We own those.
Of course.
So any excess water rights, even though you can't use them beyond your allotment, you can do what you'd like, if you'd like to sell them, or if you'd like to lease them, or whatever you'd feel.
Which brings up my third question. Is our excess sufficient in size that perhaps someone might be enticed to make an offer to lease or perhaps even buy them?
Yes, absolutely. I think so. I think with new developments or new golf courses or anything like that that's in this area. Now, you can sell those or lease those. Water rights have to be leased in the active management area. In our active management area, we can't sell or lease somebody down in Tucson or up in Payson or Prescott or anything like that. So I really think there will be a need for that down the road.
Okay. Perhaps we'll look into it. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Rest of my questions will be for Carl. I'll do my best to keep them brief. Could we bring up the slide beginning with the sports pavilion?
First slide, new.
That's the one. The question I have about this is, this room used to be somewhat used, not by a lot of people, but now we're looking at putting in perhaps 180 people at a time. Are there the necessary amount of fire exits in this room based on this plan, or has that not been something that's been thought about?
Yes, there are the correct fire exits for this room as it sits today. The architect made it clear that if we were going to go to this higher or more disciplined, planned pub environment, you'll see in the top right corner, there's a small hallway that needs to be done in the locker room going out to the exterior pool fire exit egress. So that will have to be taken into consideration and is in my costing.
Okay. As far as the door that kind of comes back into the bowling alley that goes up the ramp, so my memory right now says that that door swings into the space, and that'll need to swing out to meet code, because you can't have a door that people are trying to pull on when they're trying to get out in case of a fire.
I believe that door swings into the ramp area.
Meaning pulls
Pulls.
towards the ramp area now. Okay.
I'd have to double check it, but I believe that
Okay.
is already correct.
Because the drawing shows it swinging both ways. And
Yeah,
that's where my
just-
confusion came from.
Sorry.
Okay, good enough for that. As far as the library goes, all I'm looking at is a 5th rec center. Let's go to the backhoe, please. So it's a great picture. I'm 100% certain we're not getting anything like that for just $75,000. In fact, $75,000 is not going to buy much of a backhoe at all. How many times in the past 12 months have we had no choice but to rent a backhoe from outside because the one that we already own wasn't available?
I'll have to defer that question to Russ.
Good morning. So as you know, most of our usage is last minute emergency repairs. And as of late, the landscapers are utilizing theirs most all the time, which makes it very hard for us to get it when we need it. Rentals, as Carl mentioned, they're not always available. It speeds up the process in which we can obtain one because it would already be there. And basically that's what it's slotted for, is for emergency use for when we need to do emergency digging on repairs.
Okay, but that doesn't answer my question. How many times have we needed to use one in the past year?
5.
And a rental rate daily of $250 to perhaps $300 in a couple of hours of an employee's time.
Mm-hmm.
So $75,000 expense for something that might have been used 5 times in the past year. Okay, let's keep going. As far as the Kuntz tennis facility, the renovation, I know that we'll just reserve it because my comment is an editorial comment. The outfield fence has been knocked down to $495,000. How confident are we that we've got a really good number now, considering that it's about 2/3 of the original number?
Very confident. I had a great discussion with the new vendor, and I have documents in my office.
Okay, very good. That's encouraging. Silvercraft, this cost of this project looks to have gone up quite a bit since it was first introduced. I know how the community works. The question I have is the club contributing anything towards this? It's an enormous upgrade. And when you look at the amount per resident or per club member, it's a lot of money. So is the club even making an attempt to help out the community by doing a little fundraising on their own?
No direct contribution to the details that I have provided you in here. I know that the club is repurchasing out of their own funds the tables and chairs that they need for their new classroom space, their office materials, desk. I have none of that included in any of the project details. So basically, everything that I've sat down with the club is very defined in the price that I have here. Any extras, I've made it very clear to them that it would be their responsibility to furnish their own room.
Okay. 2 slides up, the first one, the Palm Ridge, the flat roof restoration. Curious more than anything else, the picture right now shows me a roof that's been coated with some type of a polymer. What's on those roofs now?
It's a multi-deck system, so you have your original structural components. So you have steel trusses, probably either a steel B deck or a wood decking, depending on what building it is throughout our rec centers. And then from there, you go into the multi-system roofing system, which is rubber, felt, more rubber. Every roof is a little different in our design. And then the final coating, and then the seal coating or foam.
Gotcha. So it's not a tar and gravel roof,
No,
not by any measure.
If we have any gravel roofs, it was a design bonus years ago that is trending to go away.
Sure.
So we have the opportunity of keeping that in the future years or eliminating it at a different cost.
How much life expectancy are we getting out of our existing roofing systems?
Average of 12 years once I do this recoat.
Fair enough. The pickup truck, it's half a dozen or so slides further up. People have actually asked me the question because they know that I'm on this committee. What will happen to the old truck? It's 13 years old. I'm sure it's been beat up pretty good. It's a work truck. We trade them in? Do we try and sell them outright, or do we make them available to people in the community if someone wants to buy a truck?
We don't make that available because the assumption is as soon as we sell it, and it has not been our practice in the past, that they're going to end up with a lemon, and we don't want to deal with that. That conversation came up also with cardio equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And we do trade-in on both topics,
Gotcha.
and it is very minimal.
I would think so. It's an old truck. Okay, I'm done. Thanks.
Good questions, thank you.
Director Novello?
Thanks, Director Rhodes. Because everybody here knows I'm on the governing board as well as a member of our committee, I am aware of some of these discussions within the governing board about what the strategic priorities will be for our community going forward. So it's a little awkward because I'm going to suggest or recommend that we as a committee make an action as a committee. So I'm going to take my governing board hat off briefly, if I could, just briefly, and say tomorrow will be the operations team led by Bill Schwind will be giving an overall state of the community, right? That I hope that everybody will plan to attend. We'll have a viewpoint there, a really nice cohesive viewpoint, I believe, of all of the operational priorities for next year and for coming years. The governing board, though, will also be weighing in on priorities and actually ranking those priorities for us as a community. That's a key function of a governing board, of a board of directors. So we, as a budget and finance committee, as we're considering those new projects that were highlighted in orange, the library, the repurposing of the Kuntz Center, et cetera, we've discussed quite a bit, what we have some personal views, perhaps, or editorial comments about viability. I recommend that we request of the governing board a ranked list of those strategic priorities, not a ranked list of the what's in and out of the budget, a ranked list of the 5 or 6 key priorities for the next 3 to 5 years, that we receive that by the end of February so that we can deliberate properly on those new, rather than debating amongst ourselves what we still can, what we think are the priorities, but the governing board's overall purview is to make the decision. So that's my recommendation to us as a committee, that we ask the governing board to provide that to us by the end of February. I already know that we're working on that. I just wanted to, I know that it's weird, but as a committee, I just wanted you guys to be aware, and perhaps as a committee, we and other committees are looking for that information. If so, let's ask the governing board.
I'm not sure, I'm a little, where we are with this. If, I guess there's no reason why we couldn't make that recommendation. So would you phrase what you would propose the recommendation?
Sure. I recommend that the Budget and Finance Committee, or I recommend that we ask the governing board to provide the Budget and Finance Committee a ranked list of the key priorities from the governing board for the strategic new investments for the next 3 to 5 years. I recommend that that the governing board provide those key priorities from the governing board's view by the end of February. That wasn't very succinct. I can try again.
I think we're going to have to do some wordsmithing on that, because I didn't capture all of it.
Do any of the other folks on the committee agree? Would you like to see that information? If not, don't worry.
Miller?
Well, I think that would be a great idea. You know, because otherwise we're just kind of floundering around and everybody's setting their own priorities.
On the new investments, I think it would be really essential, and I would assume that all the reason why the governing board's talking about it is that all the committees are going to want that viewpoint as well. So, and it's in addition to the operational priorities that we'll be receiving tomorrow.
Mr. Bosak?
Would that not just be a normal course of events? I mean, is that something that we have to submit as a request as opposed to isn't it?
We've been asking for it for a number of years and we haven't received it
Really?
back.
Oh, okay.
From the governing board. Our operations team routinely provides us those views, right? So, but the governing board is reviewing all of those, is my understanding. But I believe as a part of our budgeting process, it would be helpful to us to understand where the governing board sits from a priority standpoint on things like the library.
Okay.
I think I'm going to put Mr. Schwind on the spot here. I'm sorry to do that, but can you give us any insight on tomorrow's presentation regarding the future or the master plan or priorities?
How are you? Good morning, and thank you all for being here, and I hope you all do show up tomorrow. Relative to master plan, right? We have been working on this project for a while. We've been interrupted by a mass pandemic. We've been interrupted by 2 recall elections, and so the thing has drug on a bit. So what we have in place and what we've spent our resources on is basically a couple of community surveys. And those items that have kind of come out of those surveys, looking at the planning mechanism, kind of boil down to 6 or 7 items. And I think, Christine, you kind of talked about those in our last governing board meeting. They deal with pickleball, they deal with space allocation, they deal with water conservation. So a lot of these things that we're talking about, long-range plan, really have identified themselves as far as needs and wants of the community. That being married into a 30-year plan that we have that's called the reserve study that kind of blends itself into how we get to where we are today, assembling a budget. So there's a lot of moving parts. Cliff has talked a little bit today about potentially minimum wage jumping in here and kind of messing up the water when it comes to $18 an hour would blow up any kind of plan that we have. And so it's an interesting concept that we do have. Tomorrow's meeting really focuses on a 6-month report as far as this fiscal year goes. So in the next couple of months, as we assemble our budget, it really kind of comes together as one piece. But we'll talk about it tomorrow in kind of the 101, I guess, concept form when it comes to a lot of the things that we're dealing with, whether it's casual dining, whether it's water conservation, whether it's pickleball, you know, the future of what we see based on the community needs and the surveys that we've got. That's what we'll broadcast. And then we interweave that into the budget. And it is a 5-year plan, and it is even longer than that. A lot of the things we talk about, there's some infrastructure need that we have to kind of think about and plan about before moving forward. So there's a lot of things moving. So I think tomorrow's meeting may shed a little bit more light on that, but as we move forward, I think these concepts and ideas really have to get blended into what we do on a 30-year scenario, and you as the governing board really set that policy and set that tone as to how we react to that. Long answer, but I hope it all spells out tomorrow in the presentation.
So I guess the part that I'm struggling with here is, because we're really talking about a master plan, you know, because if we knew, if there was a master plan with 10 items or 5 items on it, we could hold it up against this. And then we could say, okay, this is on the master plan. This is where we're going, or we want to go with this. So is that a governing board issue, or is that an operational issue?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, obviously. Yeah. I mean, there really is a clear line when it comes to policy-driven concepts and operationally as to how we operate. So the master plan is really a developed piece of work that we have. It's an operational tool that I think we call the reserve study, right? That really is our operational plan. Concept-wise, I think we want to remain a very nationally high-ranked retirement community, be it the best adult golf community that you've got in this country. From a master plan perspective, I think we want to retain that. That's beautiful. This is a great place. And so we have a plan in place that basically keeps us at that level. And that is the fully funded balance. That is the way we maintain things. That is the way we take care of things every year. We've dropped $35 million in the last 5 years, keeping this place looking nice. And our reserve study is still growing, and our reserve fund is still growing. So there's a lot of misconception out there. There's a lot of social media that's not quite accurate. The internet isn't the truth all the time. So we are doing everything we can to shed enough light on what we do transparency-wise to make sure and give you all confidence that this is a very, very good place to be. And so from a master plan perspective, that's what we want to retain. And I think we're doing a pretty good job doing that. And so conceptually, though, there are a list of wants and there are a list of needs. The needs, I think, are all identified in the reserve study. But there's also a few needs when it comes to library expansion or facility expansion that we're hearing from users coming to us that don't have rooms for meetings. Where can we house you? You know, the library, some people use it, some people don't. But it is a very, very busy facility. Close to 7,000, 8,000 individual people, homeowners, walk in there annually, 130,000 times, right? You may not know that, but it's a busy facility. But when it comes to needs of what we're hearing from the walk-ins that say, Bill, can I rent a place? They don't want a 6,000 square foot facility. They need a classroom. I don't have a classroom to offer you. But those are the trends that we're seeing. And so we plan for those. From a master planning perspective, that's what we look at. Pickleball is a hugely growing sport. You all know that. So conceptually, I don't have a whitewash board when you consider master plan community. We're not starting over. We are built out. And so how do you deal with that? So we have to be strategically smart and put the right people in the right spots. So when it comes to being efficient with money, I think the team that we've assembled do a tremendous job doing that. So we'll express where we think pickleball courts should be, how we can assist with club use, how can we assist with recreational use, that's all there. So we'll get there, and it's just, tomorrow's meeting is really more of a 6-month info as to kind of where we've gotten. But moving forward into the budget scenario, we will tackle these subject matters. You can call it a master plan if you like, but it's really a community update from a long-term plan. So, a lot going on there, but from a policy perspective, governing board gets their recommendations from the committees that they've established, right? And they set that line. We take that and we operate. So those are really the things on really how this works.
The governing board and all of the committees often say, or I say this year, we decide and discuss what the priorities are, you guys, and the policies and so forth. But the operations team tackles the how do we do that now type of thing. And we come together in the middle on things like the priorities. So thank you. It still means for the next year or two, there are going to be some things in the new investments that we as a community may believe are more important than others. So that's where the governing board, we could use some input and advisory from the governing board to complement what you've already told us.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the things that we've captured with Club Track and the counting of heads and understanding, how much of a demand are new pickleball courts. We're looking at usage. The same thing with tennis courts. Same things with people using our facilities when it comes to club space. Some clubs are expanding and some are winding down. It's really no fault of staff or any finger point that needs to go on. It's just things change. People's wants and desires change. So we have to study that. And basically with the space allocation program, we just try to make sure we're using the facilities that we have, which are not abundant, but we try to put the right folks in the right spot to accommodate all.
And one more follow-up, if I may, on the before we go to other questions. The survey that you mentioned, I believe that was conducted in 2019. Is that correct?
No, there's been several.
Okay.
Yes, I think it started back then, and then it kind of flopped in the middle of the COVID scenario, and then when Michelle came out and did the presentations relative to the second survey and all the team meetings that we had and brought in the community members to roundtable and discuss, that was all presented, I believe, in 22. Yeah.
Well, I'm still struggling with what it is that we would ask the governing board to do, because
I would ask the governing board to provide a ranked list of the key 5 priorities for the next 3 to 5 years.
There you go.
Ranked list. That's all.
There you go.
Does anybody join me in that request?
Why would it just be 5? And does
Picked it out of thin air. Could be more than that, but it should be just a very high level. It's not a list of.
Oh.
It's not the list of 75 projects, in my opinion, right?
Okay.
We don't want a ranked list of that. That's crazy talk. But what of the new priorities that have been put forward, like casual dining, an updated library, what's the ranking priority of those? So if we have to make some tough calls of what we fund and what we don't next year, we have the governing board's perspective of what's the long-term strategic value to the community, and we can pair that up with the needs that are already coming from operations.
Oh, okay, so would that list come out of the master plan? Or
There is no
it-
master plan written down,
That
so we're
would
just
be-
asking for the top
that
priorities.
would be the proxy.
Chairman Rhodes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir, David?
So since I'm acting as secretary today, I'm trying to take notes, and this is what I wrote down in regard to Christine's recommendation. Recommends that a ranked list of key priorities on new investments be provided to the Sun City West committees by the end of February. Does that capture what you, okay.
I think it does. Well, let's go ahead. Do we have any discussion on this? Do we have consensus that this is Okay,
Yes.
Yes.
okay, David? Thumbs up across the board. Okay. Be a recommendation that will come out of this meeting. One that I didn't expect, but one that I think is going to be, that I think this is a really good idea. You know, Christine, I think, hit this directly on the head, is that if we have something that we can look at and know that from a unified perspective, this is what we're looking to do, it will help us in making these decisions or making these recommendations. Yeah, you had something, Carl?
Any final questions on the capital projects list that we're proposing?
Mr. Bosak?
I appreciate what you've done, Carl, as always, very open and very informative. I should have caught you while you were still up here, Bill, because the two of the issues I wanted to ask you about, has the library board been engaged in this whole scenario? I have the impression that they were initially caught off guard by its proposal, but are they on board, and have they been consulted on how this thing ought to move forward?
Yeah, Tracy and Katie, are making headway with them as far as their 501c3 structure, potentially assisting with any kind of financial scenarios that we've got. So yes, but infancy stage.
So as this list begins to be created, the financial aspect of it is going to weigh heavily on the ranking, I'm presuming.
Right.
So for them to come to some kind of resolution on whether they will or won't be willing to participate could have a bearing on where they fall within the ranking.
I would agree with that. And I think where we are now with the contingency money spent, it was really more of a planning tool to kind of get this thing off the ground a little bit,
Right.
Moving it forward with a conceptual. So much easier to share with people than, just talking about an idea. You have a visual. And then the program that Carl is representing as far as the $100,000 project, if this thing does prioritize and move forward, there's some structural conceptions that we have to get under our belt here. Can that building even be expanded to where Maricopa County has setbacks? All those types of things really need to be, from an engineering perspective, we need a little bit more answers as to what we can do in reality, just based on where that facility is, the age of the building, and if and what walls are movable. So that's kind of what we're going there, but it really is it's really more for a planning tool than anything else.
Yeah, I'm certain that the community, after the presentation, thought this was something that was on the front burner and going to happen immediately, and it couldn't be further from the truth. It's just absolutely getting started. Second point, we have the pickleball president, and I'm sure for the third time she'll probably get up and ask why we're doing the pickleball thing at Kuntz. She said numerous times that she thinks that's a bad spend, and I'm just curious how her opinion, which I'm sure represents the club in general, fits into why we're continuing to talk about moving this forward when in fact the club thinks it's not a good idea.
Right. The facility behind the softball field, which were 6 tennis courts at the Kuntz facility, are in tremendously poor shape. We've tried to keep them open from a concept of, 3 are just unplayable. Tennis, pickleball, or really anything else. You got tripping hazards and splits in the asphalt and those types of things. So ordinarily, if this were and it was in our reserve study, time to replace 6 tennis courts. But the concept there is, do we need 6 tennis courts? We have 16 tennis courts now. We're doing a study on the usage of those facilities, and quite frankly, they're not busting at the seams currently at the Racket Center. Pickleball, a little different story. The club's huge, but they too are not, I think, at a point today that we need to add some additional courts. Now, if someone wants to play pickleball and is not a club member, they're limited. And so conceptually, with the growth of that sport, the concept was, if we're going to redo these tennis court facilities based on the desire of what we're hearing from folks playing pickleball, that they'd like to see more courts, this was somewhat of a quick fix. If we're going to replace the courts, it comes down to striping and the coating as far as that goes, to be able to use it in a multi-use facility. So if we had a few tennis courts that were still available for folks to use and a few pickleball courts for additional folks to use, with the growth of the sport, that might be good. So we're looking at that. Down the road, if you have 16 tennis courts, can you get by with 10? Can the racket center be used for a multi-use scenario? But having those conversations is a little bit like refereeing the Hatfields and McCoys. You know, it's not an easy subject. You know, pickleball has a noise issue, and tennis is a different game, right? But can the two live together? We're seeing that nationally, yes. So really, it's just a concept here of how we expand, and we have to do that planning moving forward. So,
Well, my point in mentioning it again was it's one of the master plan topics.
it is.
So if the governing board is going to come up with some sort of ranking and resolution, those kinds of things need to be considered before it even moves forward, because the expense involved is going to, again, dictate what the ranking comes to be. So some of this stuff that we've been talking about has to come to resolution pretty quickly if, in fact, we're going to come up with a list that has any value. That's my only point.
True that.
I have other questions, but those can wait.
Thank you.
Ms. Kellis?
I have a question, just kind of going off what Gary said to Bill. I know this is a whole different expense and way above just redoing the tennis courts into pickleball courts, but with the growth in pickleball and knowing how hot our summers are, have we given any thought to making it a building and an enclosure for the pickleball courts that could be cooled? That may be way out of expense, you know, being able to pay for that, but in the Kuntz location, I'm hearing that it's not a good location to play pickleball because of the walls. Well, if it was an enclosed facility, it seems like we would have a lot of usage during the summertime and possibly even have tournaments come in there.
Yeah, we have looked at that. Obviously, there's a somewhat enclosed structure over at the Sun City facility where it's shaded, providing a little bit more kind of leniency when it comes to playing in the summer with the sunlight. The issue with Kuntz is really, when it comes to Maricopa County, approval on any kind of permits is property setback lines from existing property as well as available parking and restroom facilities if you're going to do anything indoor. And that location currently at Kuntz doesn't really present itself with a high option for any kind of indoor facility, just due to parking alone is an issue. So that's why we're not really conceptualizing the whole thing being blown out and turn it into a bunch of pickleball courts, because I don't think we'd ever achieve Maricopa County's permit as far as parking goes. So it's still a concept that we're struggling with, but I think offering what we're currently offering with multiple, because it already is allocated for tennis, but adding a few more pickleball courts, I think Maricopa County and their standards, I think, would approve of what we're presenting. But doing anything more than that, I think we'd have a difficult time with permitting.
Thank you.
I didn't know if you wanted to take people in the room first.
Yeah. Do we have anyone?
Yeah, Chris Waller, 140-558. You know, what I'm hearing is something has to happen with that area, correct? I mean, right now, it's to exaggerate, it's kind of a slum area set in the back that we don't want to leave it like that. So that's kind of interesting that just came to my head right now, that we have to do something. And it sounds like we're, you know, leaning towards combination tennis and pickleball, even though the pickleball doesn't need that area. I kind of like the idea of having a couple extra in there that doesn't hurt anybody, and then get rid of that sore spot that we have. That was my comment, not a question.
Do we have anyone else in the audience?
Coke Schaefer, 118548. As I've already been, everyone's been talking about me, I'm the president of Pickball. And we have 1,940 members as of the end of, as of now. So it's not that we don't need more courts. It's just that we don't think that Kuntz is the right place to put them. The parking, the walls, The noise that would be if we had 12 pickleball courts inside those walls, it's going to mushroom out into the neighborhood, and those houses there are very close. We just don't think it's the right spot. We do need courts, or we will need courts soon, but Kuntz is not the answer as far as we're concerned.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else? Okay, do we have anyone online, Christine?
We have a few questions online from the same resident. I'm going to read them, and you can decide how to respond. Mystical Michelle, record number 127597. Given the volume of equipment that gets changed out, what happens with the old equipment and vehicles? Is it sold to an auction facility or disposed of? I believe that's been answered. Follow-up to that question was, if we do trade in all equipment, is that accounted for in the pricing put forth in the budget?
Great question. Because of the way we dispose the assets, we don't, unless we take it, well, let me back that off. We put the price in for the new vehicle, and because of the way we dispose of the assets, we can't include it in a price reduction. However, we take those funds in, apply them as a gain on sale, and those are reflected down in the capital section of the financial statement. So they don't reduce the price on the line item, but ultimately they do reduce the price. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Same resident, second or third question, 127597, Mystical Michelle. Can you please confirm the number of residents who responded to the survey, if those responses were strictly residents, or if these included input outside of actual residents?
We have that number. We don't have it on the top of our minds, but we can get that number and present it at the next meeting. They were all owner members.
Thank you.
They were all members. Okay. Okay, do we have anything else? No? Well, thank you. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Mr. Schwind. Appreciate it. Thank you, Todd. Did a very nice job. We appreciate that. I'm going to ask for committee comments. Ms. Kellis? Mr. Bosak? Mr. Miller? Christine?
No further comments.
Our next meeting will be February the 6th. This is going to be an interesting meeting. Give you a little advance notice on this. We're going to have two presentations. One of them is going to be from the company that's doing our workman's comp, and you will hear a very interesting presentation there. And then the second presentation will be by Cap Trust, and they will report on our performance for our reserve fund. So it is 10:43, and I wish to adjourn the meeting.